So great. So kind of switching gears now to our second automation, which is batching. As a customer's volume increases, how can ShipHawk WMS, help automate the batching of those orders?
Great question. Great question. Well, batching, number one, just for people who may not be on a WMS or really utilizing it every day, batching is essentially looking at orders and grouping them based off of efficiencies. So looking at across, we'll say 100 or 1,000 orders and determining what is the optimal way for me to group orders together. Let's find orders that have similar items on them or are coming from similar aisles. That is the true purpose of batching, is to really give you a very efficient sort of batch of work, hand it to a picker, and then allow them to go through the pick path and get that work completed. So what I actually want to talk about first is looking at a couple different ways in our WMS to actually pick. So our WMS has 6 really key standard types of picking, where we're looking at cluster picking, which are groups of multi-line, multi-quantity orders. A great example I heard somebody I was speaking to earlier say is, think of Instacart shopping, right? Where somebody's at the grocery store and picking out orders, right? Maybe they have orders for me and orders for Elise. They're going to be going down the aisles and they'll go to a location. Maybe I ordered pasta sauce and Elise ordered pasta noodles. Those are going to be right next to each other. So it'd be very efficient for them to grab the pasta sauce, put it in my bag, and then the pasta noodles and put them in Elise's bag. That is a good example of what cluster picking is. And then batch picking, single line, single quantity, highly, highly efficient in warehouses that have that sort of commonality of those single line, single quantities, where we can essentially group them all, pick them in one mass task, get them to the pack station, and then shipped out very, very efficiently. And then a few others like super batch and wave picking are really great for customers that may have a niche type of order, and those can really improve their efficiency. And then of course, consolidation orders, when you guys have a customer who's ordering on your site or multiple sites, and you need to get those grouped together, picked together, and then shipped out in one shipment, thus saving you guys that shipping cost instead of having multiple orders. So how does our actual batching work? This is a great example, very similar to our directed put away, where we have a rules-driven allocation. Our system is looking at an order type, looking at the attributes of an order to determine, well, how should we actually fulfill this? So we can see right here, we've got an e-commerce set of orders, we've got wholesale orders, and then we've got special orders. And a lot of customers and people and opportunities that we talk to are always saying, hey, Jack, I'm really struggling right now. I've got Amazon FBA orders, those pick a pallet. But then I've got these e-commerce orders from Amazon Seller Fulfilled Prime, and those only need a few units. We're really struggling to stay on top because sometimes the FBA picker comes down and actually decrements and consumes all the inventory out of the e-commerce pick location. That is a great scenario where these rules are going to come into play. So what this is showing is that the e-commerce are always going to first fulfill from these blue zones, from these forward pick locations, which if you're looking behind me on my screen is probably going to be one of these floor locations. But then maybe these green backstock locations for bigger orders like a wholesale, an Amazon FBA, or maybe an EDI order from a large vendor like a Walmart or a Home Depot, maybe we need to pick those from a backstock location or reserve location because the picker has a forklift and because they know they need to get a pallet quantity work. And then maybe we have special orders, ones that are really specific to a VIP or somebody very obviously important. So that's where special orders can come into play if we need to do any sort of engraving or any sort of special work for that order. That is the true purpose of batching here, and we absolutely love it. So one thing I always love to talk about is, well, how does all this work? How does ShipHawk know how to optimize these and what the optimal path is? So really what this screenshot right here is just saying reducing foot travel to increase picking efficiency. So this is a very common sequencing practice that a lot of customers work with, where you're going to start at a given position, and that is essentially the beginning of the pick line. And then that user is going to travel through each line or each aisle and pick those. But one thing about our optimization is that maybe for a batch, you don't have to travel through every single aisle. And I think that's really important because instead of the system saying, hey, yeah, we're just going to group all your orders together and you're going to go through this one time, that's not good enough for ShipHawk. What our system is looking to do is saying, hey, let's look at that first order. And maybe it comes out of this location 10, right here at the top. It's then going to find however many more orders, we'll say 10 orders can be batched together. It's going to find 10 orders with the minimum amount of foot travel. So instead of having a 10 and then over here with a 67 and then maybe a 90, it's going to be looking for ones that have, 10, 13, 14, all the way down this aisle. So instead of having to go the entire pick path, we're only having to go through a subset of that. And that is so, so important because, like I said, picking the entire pick path is not good enough for us. We're trying to really optimize your fulfillment and optimize and reduce that foot travel right there. And one thing I always love to highlight is just looking at cluster picking. One of the most common picking practices in an e-commerce fulfillment operation. And we actually can optimize those clusters by order profile. And this is where that automation piece comes into play. With customers who have varying sizes of products, varying sizes of orders, a lot of customers are constantly struggling for somebody on the floor or a wave planner who's actually going through and looking at the orders, looking at the numbers and saying, hey, I think these 5 orders should go together. These 10 orders should go together, but then this order should be picked alone. Our system can evaluate the cube, the weight, the number of units on an order, and understand that you may have different types of picking totes. So if we look at this example, we could have the system set up to where we have 8 different picking totes or 2 different larger picking totes, and our system's going to be able to batch to those independently. So that way, hey, if something's got 2 totes on it, I have a bigger sized order. But maybe this third one right here with 12 different totes on it, that's because our system said, hey, these are really small cubic orders or small number of units, and allows you to batch directly into that. Once again, improving that warehouse efficiency, not locking you into one type. I was recently working with a customer, and funny story, they sell some small stuff, they sell some big stuff, and they were really struggling with this. And we went in here, we sort of did some work with them to understand what this would look like in their volume. And we felt that about 30% of their volume could be driven into these really small totes. But because of what they had today, they were picking more into these larger size totes. So right off the bat, we were able to increase their efficiency with no increased human interaction. Let the system automatically do that for you. So, so, so important in our business. And then lastly, the thing that I always love to touch on is looking at our actual batching screen. So I'm going to jump back into our environment and go to our pick process here and actually look at our release wave batch process. So as I mentioned, that's all happening behind the scenes. As orders are coming in from your ERP, like a NetSuite or Acumatica, they're just going to go through an automated wave process and drop into this dashboard right here. So this is, as you can see, my unreleased tasks, where I can see all that great information about what work is in front of the team. Unreleased being it's not available to the floor team yet. I would say, think of Monday morning, you walk in, nobody's done anything. That's where these orders are sitting. They're allocated, they're ready to go, but nobody has told the system that they can actually be started yet. So what we can see here is some great information like type. So whether we're looking at a batch pick, that's single line, single quantity, whether we're looking at a cluster pick, which is the multi-line, multi-quantity orders. And then some great information here that we can see is, let's look at this one right here. In this batch, a user has 152 orders that they can fulfill. They're going to have 118 unique items, and that's coming from 117 unique bins. That didn't happen by chance. We don't have more orders than picks just by chance. That's because our optimization is running behind the scenes and evaluating these orders to say, hey, I see that all these orders have this similar item. Let's get and pick those together. And I'm sure a question out there is, well, how often does that happen? Are we optimizing once a day or every hour or so? Our system natively optimizes every 15 minutes. So very similar to as we're looking at orders to waive them, the system is also immediately after going to optimize them. And if we find a better candidate order, so maybe an order came in at midnight the night before, and then a new order came in at 4 a.m., even though they're so far apart, our system, because they're unreleased, can actually relook at all those independently, optimize them, and say, hey, here's a better candidate of an order for that. So that is a great high-level overview about our automation on the batching side. So if you're used to printing pick tickets and you've got somebody who manages that on the ERP side, prints out pick tickets, puts them in a bin, and you have issues with that, then this could be a fantastic process for you, especially as you continue to grow and scale. Because I say, at 100 orders a day, maybe printing those pick tickets are great. But what happens when you get to 200, 300? You're increasing your channels. You're no longer just shipping e-commerce, but now you've got Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart or Academy in play now. That is where this batching helps continue to automate that process without ever having to increase your human capital there.